Good evening. I'm David Smith, and this is Week in Review. We're coming to you from our super secret broadcast bunker in Arkansas. Tonight we'll be discussing voter fraud in Maine and the author HP Lovecraft. I'm here with our... Oh, no, that's fine. I'm here this evening with our co-host Eric Hoffman, who's joining us via Skype from, by telephone from San Diego, California, and our producer, director, and audiovisual engineer Daniel, who's here in the studio with me. You can contact us here at our super secret broadcast bunker at our Twitter hashtag WIRTV. And you can contact any one of us by email, David, Daniel, or Eric at weekinreview.tv. Well, gentlemen, voter fraud in Maine. Seems to be that Mitt Romney was declared the winner there, even though half of the people apparently didn't vote. And there's a great deal of controversy over the votes of those who did bother to attend the caucuses.
Yeah, I think voter fraud is going to be the watchword for this year's election. Both parties.
The theme du jour.
Well, this just this appears to I'm trying to make sense of it. What's the purpose behind it? I'm kind of wondering if the Republicans changed their method of choosing a candidate. It's not going to be done in the traditional backroom method, the smoke-filled room behind the convention floor. As it's been done in the past, they're actually going to go to the way that the Democratic Party chooses their candidate by votes of delegates.
By voter fraud.
Yeah, by voter fraud.
So it sounds like
you're going to go through the tried and trusted Democratic method of voter fraud.
Yes, it's just...
It sounds as though they're not wanting to give up the power that they had, and they're just trying to give a good show to make people think that they have control of the process.
Yeah.
And they're just inexperienced at it.
Well, Daniel, why don't you play this video? We've got a video about the Maine voter fraud issue, and it really clarifies the topic here. So if you'd play that, it's about 7 or 8 minutes long.
The headlines this weekend. Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney is back on track after winning the Maine caucuses. What the headlines haven't told you is that what happened in Maine is the messiest caucus Republicans have had so far, and it may not be over just yet. So was there rampant voter fraud in Maine? Then it is investigating a reality check that you won't see anywhere else.
Maine is not a major state during the national primaries. Only 24 or so delegates come out of Maine to the convention. But what happened there over the weekend does more than just raise eyebrows. It is enough to make you question, was the caucus fixed? Saturday night, February 11th, the head of the Maine GOP, Charlie Webster, announced that Governor Mitt Romney won the Maine caucus by a slim margin. Official totals read that Romney barely won the caucus by less than 200 votes. The only problem? The governor was declared the winner with only 84% of precincts counted. Two counties, Washington County and Hancock County, had not held their caucuses. In Hancock, county Republicans had decided to hold their caucus this Saturday, February 18th. In Washington County, though, the state canceled the caucus because of snow concerns. Turns out the area only got a light dusting. Now, the problem here, Mr. Webster says even when those caucuses are held this Saturday, the votes won't count. I talked with him on the phone.
On February 11th, that was election day. Our rules said this is when you're going to have to vote by this date. If you're out of town that day, you don't get your vote counted. I'll let the caucuses will be held. The state committee, our governing body, will have to decide if we want to expand that.
You heard right. The head of the GOP in Maine saying that the caucuses will be held this weekend, and even though party officials were the ones who canceled the caucus in Washington County, they will not count the votes of those who turn out because they missed the February 11th deadline. And if the party decides to count those votes, well, they won't make that decision until the second week of March after Super Tuesday. Well, that alone has caused a huge blow-up across Maine. The state Senate President, Kevin Ray, says that, quote, our votes in Washington County must count as much as votes cast anywhere else, end quote. And Mr. Webster says it doesn't matter if the votes are counted because really it's just a straw poll. And he is correct that it is a straw poll and that the delegates are not bound to any candidate, meaning the delegates can vote in the convention for whomever they choose. But if you want to disregard the straw poll, don't hold one in the first place. But aside from the state GOP not wanting to include Washington County, there is another major issue from these Maine caucuses. Even though Governor Romney was already declared the winner, the numbers that the state GOP in Maine are reporting are, according to caucus chairman, incorrect. Take, for instance, Waldo County, where voters from 18 towns gathered for municipal caucuses in a countywide event. A total of 138 votes were cast. In the official Maine GOP tallies, however, the results from all but one of those communities, all but one, were given as a series of zeros below the name of each candidate, meaning the official tally shows that no one voted. The town of Belfast was one of 10 towns that held a joint caucus on the same day. That caucus was held on February 4th. I talked with Matt McDonald, a pastor of a small community church in Belfast. He was nominated as the chairman of the Belfast caucus. He says 22 people showed up and they caucused on the 4th. McDonald also says that the state instructed the chairman of the caucuses to not read any of the votes aloud and instead to send them directly to Augusta. As his first order of business, McDonald made a motion to have the votes read aloud at the caucus, and it passed unanimously. At the end of the caucus,
we caucused, and the vote was 8 for Ron Paul, 7 for Rick Santorum, 5 for Mitt Romney, and there were 2 undecideds. We recorded this publicly, we counted it publicly.
So public that McDonald tweeted the results on the night of the 4th. Take a look. But on Monday of this week, hearing all the controversy surrounding the announcement of Governor Romney as the winner, McDonald checked the state party's website and saw that no results had been posted from the Belfast caucus.
The lady on the line said that she had received our tallies, our votes, but hadn't recorded them online yet. And she said Romney with 9, Rick Santorum with 5, Ron Paul with 2. Well, of course, those were not the right numbers. And I told her, you know, I'm sorry, ma'am, those aren't the right numbers. And she said, well, those are the numbers we have. And I said, well, you know, there are 22 Republicans down here in Belfast who would tell you different because we counted our votes publicly. And it's kind of her, you know, it's in light of that, her voice kind of changed, and she said, thank you very much, we'll record this, and we ended the conversation.
And that is just one of several very strange inconsistencies. You see, dozens of towns on the GOP site are listed as if no one voted, including in Waterville, Maine, home to 15,000 people. A count on the site, as Maine goes, indicates that Congressman Ron Paul may have already won over Governor Romney by 10 votes. Can you say Iowa 2.0?
If these issues of transparency aren't dealt with, and the GOP nationally pushes Mitt Romney on the state of Maine, personally, I will either vote for Barack Obama or withhold my vote. And I've been voting for 15 years now, or 14 years, and I've only voted for Republicans.
And that is what you need to know. What has happened in Maine is nothing short of a disaster for the Republican Party there. Is this a case of jumping the gun, sheer incompetence, or is it blatant fraud? Well, you can make up your own mind on that. But here is what is crystal clear. Unless the leadership in Maine publicly counts votes and ensures that every voter is heard, even though this is just a straw poll, the leadership may win the battle of keeping Governor Romney from having lost 4 contests in a row, but may lose the war of galvanizing that vote in the general election come November. And that is Reality Check.
Well, if you would like to make your voice heard on the story, head over to Ben's Facebook page. You can find it by simply searching Ben Swan, WXIX.
Wow. That's pretty bad.
Well, it sounds like the Republican establishment is scared of Ron Paul.
Well, that's the thing. They can't let him become the candidate.
Yeah.
Either side, either the Democrats, because he would undo everything, all the social engineering that they want to do, and he would cause such a revision in the Republican Party.
So yeah, both the Republicans and the Democrats, even though the Democrats don't like to admit it, like money. No one wants him getting into the Fed.
No, because as you pointed out, Eric, the only difference between the Republicans and the Democrat is spending priorities. How they spend the money, not the fact that they want the money. It's just how they spend it.
Yep.
That's the.
So yeah, no one wants anybody looking into the Fed. None of the establishment parties. Nobody of the establishment people.
And now we're beginning to look like a banana republic with nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And we're going around the world telling other countries that you can't have nuclear technology. This makes us look pretty bad.
Well, yeah. Well, it also points out, as you were talking about, it's time for some sort of national or at least state, well, not national, it's time for each state to have a voter ID program.
Oh, we need to. Well, this is the other issue I heard. Came across the story of a man who went and found the names of 5 dead people. And he went to their particular precincts, presented their name in order to vote, and they simply looked at the voter rolls, which hadn't been purged for quite some time. The name appeared, and he would have been allowed to vote. He didn't, but he walked away. He just wanted to prove a point. Apparently, the voter rolls are not purged. They're, dead people all over the place voting all the time, apparently.
Yeah, well, as you know, I lived a long time in Las Vegas, Nevada. The Democratic Party is way against any ID in that state because, yeah, that's how they've kept Terry Reid in office all these years.
Well, you're probably voting for him. You're probably on the record there as well as the county you're in now.
Yeah, we're probably still voting in the LA County elections. I'll bet that's still going on.
Oh yeah, probably yeah. But I know that the casino bosses would load up the bus with the SIU people and take them around to the polls
And that's
during work hours.
Well, this is just. What do you think is the reason behind this? I'm trying to understand what it's either the Republicans and the Democrats are so desperate because the Republicans don't want the war within their own party that's going to happen because Ron Paul obviously probably has won each of or come in second in each of the primaries that have been held.
Oh, yeah.
But of course
The Republicans really don't want Ron Paul to be the nominee or to have any real power at the convention.
And with the rewrite of the Republican rules, the way it is, it's going to be fought out on the convention floor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I heard a surprising statistic that Obama, even though he hasn't raised as much money, anywhere near as much money this year at this time that he raised last year at this time. So even though he's running unopposed in the Democratic primaries, he's already having troubles.
I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen with the election process here. It looks like the country's just falling apart. People are, and if they find out that they're being lied to, and their vote isn't counting, no one's going to go to the polls. No one's going to care.
I don't know what's going to happen this election. You kind of wonder, the country's in such bad shape, why the Democrats want power back. It's to reward their buddies, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and the Republicans, of course, want to reward their buddies, yeah.
We've got this
we found out the main part of the stimulus, there was a big document dump today, the main part of the stimulus was for companies like Solyndra.
Oh, yeah. Well, they keep going bankrupt. And,
That was the centerpiece of Obama's policy, his domestic policy, was this green energy stuff, his buddies, Al Gore.
Oh, I'm sure Al Gore made quite a killing on that. He didn't make any on the global warming initially, like he thought he was going to, but
Well, yeah. Well, I think that's why Solyndra actually went bankrupt. Is if the Democrats, if they decided to push cap and trade instead of health care, then yeah, all those companies probably wouldn't have gone bankrupt because they would have pushed energy prices up so high they would have been competitive.
I don't know. It's just, but this election fraud is just. This is going to drive a wedge between the Democrats and the Republicans. It'll probably cause the Republican Party to disintegrate.
Probably will cause both parties to disintegrate. Hopefully
Yeah.
that's what will happen.
Yeah, and then we'll just have a write-in ballot.
Hopefully, yeah. Like I said, these two parties have had power too long. They've gotten too corrupt. There's been no one to challenge them.
I think that would create a great deal of instability, but that might be what's needed.
That's what's needed. These parties both have entrenched interests in the media and everywhere else. And like I said, maybe it's just time to get rid of both of them.
Get rid of them and find someone else. But this is just shocking because this is the Iowa caucuses. There was a question in New Hampshire. There was some problem in South Carolina, in Nevada, now in Maine. And of course, there were questions about Colorado as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, like I said, this bailout mentality has just gone too far.
No.
It's time to stop propping up things that don't work.
Well, this is because it's beginning to show. We know the 1960 campaign was won by Kennedy because 100,000 dead people voted in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
because that's the margin that he won by.
The Democratic Party has been practicing voter fraud for a very long time, and quite openly till recently.
Well, and then of course, landslide Lyndon, when Lyndon Johnson won his election to the Senate, they found those 202 votes in that box. All but 2 were for Johnson. And then they went and compared them to the voter rolls. And the 202 people that were registered, they were all written by the same hand. Entered into the register with the same hand, with the same ink. So it was
you don't have to go back that far. Remember Al Franken's recount in Minnesota? They kept finding more votes for him here and there and everywhere.
Oh, yes. That's just... And then, of course, the Bush election, Bush-Gore.
Yeah, Bush-Gore.
We need a reform in our entire political system. It's just badly broken, and it's becoming very evident.
Well, there's one office that we need to make nonpartisan. I don't know how we're going to do it, but it's Attorney General.
Oh, yeah, that needs to be... Well, that whole mess. I mean, the corruption there is just unbelievable.
You can pretty much tell the way a state's going to go in a close election if you just find out the party affiliation of the Attorney General.
Yeah. That's, or the Secretary of State, who has to certify the...
Yeah, the Attorney General and the Secretary of State. Those are the two people. If they're Republican, pretty much the state's going to go Republican. If they're Democrat, the state's going to go Democrat.
Yeah. We need to go back. We need to have about where there's just a big piece of paper with the names of the candidates, and you take a crayon and you mark off. It may take a little while to count the votes. We may have to wait for a day or two to get the results, but at least it would be honest.
Oh, yeah. Well, There's other ways to do this. Either, everybody shows up and waves at a camera and, like you said, marks their ballot with a crayon right there.
Yeah. It's just, or we need to find a way to use technology, the modern technology, so it's not corrupted, but we can vote from home. We need to find some way, but we definitely need to have voter ID requirements.
Every state needs to have a credible voter ID, photo ID.
Yeah, you can
Credible voter ID.
You can do that pretty easily. One example would be to take you can put out a file on a website, print it out, and then you could take your crayon and mark in the box that you're interested in, hold it up right next to your face, and they'll take a picture on your webcam or whatever, or your cell phone or something, and email that in, and a computer can automatically do recognition on that crayon and determine which vote you chose.
Oh, yeah. No, this is easy to do. Like you said, the banks, everybody who handles money, they do this all the time. This is intentional. This is built in intentionally, this voter fraud.
Yeah, because there are nations that have never had an election that managed to get, a higher turnout, 80, 90%, and they don't have voter fraud.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So,
no, this is all intentionally built in because, like I said, you go to a bank, even if you had the same teller for every day you've gone there for 30 years, she still asks to see your ID and you go through the rigmarole.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know here, when I go to vote, I have to present my identification card, my state identification card.
Yeah.
And then they go down the list, and, I vote every election, no matter what it is, and so I stay on the voter rolls, but I still have to present that ID, and they compare it. They compare it to my name and my address, and,
Oh, yeah, this is all easily taken care of. This is all intentionally built in, this voter fraud.
Well,
like I said, there's two officers you got to look at in every state, the Secretary of State and the Attorney General.
We need to get that cleared up because this is just, we might as well, toss the towel in if we're going to let this go on.
Yeah.
So, and this is something we can do. We can protest and get this fixed.
Yeah, well, I've pretty much said since 2008 we've just become a banana republic with nuclear weapons.
It's a very dangerous situation we're in, and now it's just out there. There's no hiding it. So.
No, they don't even hide it. They don't even hide it anymore. That's what I mean. That's how much of a banana republic we've become. They don't even hide it. Like those Latin American countries where they have the guard with the gun there. Who are you voting for?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, they're not even hiding it. It's like that. You heard about how they got that 98% of Catholic women use contraception, didn't you?
No.
They asked all women who are trying not to have kids if they're using contraception.
Well, that whole thing, you could get me going on that, and maybe we'll discuss that some other time.
That's how the Democrats got that.
Yes, of course. Yeah. That's all simply nonsense.
So basically, they said, if you're using contraception, are you using contraception?
Yeah.
Well, of course, 98% said yeah. They just said was using the calendar, the rhythm method, with the 2% they said weren't using contraception.
Oh, that's all. Yes. That whole situation just irritates me to no end. But let's move on. That's fraud. All those things are fraud. Okay. Remember the rule. Yeah. There are lies, damned lies, and statistics.
Yeah.
So, you make a statistical analysis mean anything you want, just by the way you ask the question or by the way you present the.
I just thought it was funny when I found out how they did that sampling.
Yes, it was just. Well, why don't we talk about our author this week? I think.
Let's talk about HP Lovecraft.
Yes, someone who's highly influential in our culture today.
Yeah, he seems highly influential, and a lot of people don't even know they're influenced by him. He was born in 1890 and died in 1937. He had a short life, and he was known as a pulp fiction author. He never made it to the big leagues, as they say.
Well,
Never
he
had a book.
considered, he was an old school. He didn't believe that you wrote for a living. You did it because of the love of writing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was very much only Philistines are up for money. So he died poor. He wanted to be an astronomer when he was young, but he was no good in math, so he got into amateur journalism. It saved his life, basically, turned him around, and he wrote weird stories, horror stories. Anybody's heard the name Cthulhu, Necronomicon, Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep?
Yeah.
You've heard of, been influenced by Lovecraft.
Well, he got his friends to begin contributing to the mythos and expanding it. He started it, but they expanded it, and now it's...
Yeah, he encouraged his friends. He said, take any ideas you want out of my stories and write stories based on it.
Yeah, Clark Ashton Smith.
Clark Ashton Smith, Bob Howard, Robert E. Howard.
Yeah, Robert E. Howard.
And later on, Robert
August
Bloch,
Derleth.
August Derleth.
And
then
now
the
in
next generation of...
Guillermo del Toro, who did the director of Hellboy and of Constantine. If you've read Lovecraft, you can see the influence because it's not even hidden. It's just very open. It's right there.
Oh, yeah. Brian Lumley,
yes,
contemporary British author. Yeah, well, it turns out a lot of those kids that were reading those pulp magazines grew up to be writers, like Stephen King, and the Lovecraft influence just spread.
Yeah, it's been very, very extensive.
So every time you're watching a TV show and you hear reference to the old ones, the Necronomicon, there's Lovecraft.
Well, he contributed quite a bit of his work to, wasn't it Weird Tales, the magazine?
Weird Tales.
And then,
Weird Tales.
Then there was one other magazine, I can't remember the name of it. It was sort of the magazine after Weird Tales had closed down.
Yeah, I forget too. Amazing Fantasy, I think.
Yeah, Amazing Fantasy, I think. But he was...
Yeah. Anyways, no, he wasn't considered a writer of any note during his lifetime. He never got a literary review. He was also a prominent ghostwriter. He wrote for Harry Houdini, amongst others.
Well, he was a prolific, just a prolific correspondent. There were like over 100,000 letters that he wrote to various friends during his lifetime. And I'm sure his writing suffered because of that.
I'm sure it did. If he had put that effort into writing stories and novels,
and he was only 47 years old, so that was just an incredible, voluminous amount of writing. And these weren't like short one-page letters. Some of them went on 8, 10, 20 pages at a time. So
most of the letters are more involved than his stories were.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting about Lovecraft is they all started. His inspiration was his own dreams.
Yes.
He started suffering from isolated sleep paralysis in 1904. His grandfather died. And most people probably don't know what sleep paralysis is, but it's the classic nightmare. You wake up, you can't breathe, and you think there's a figure in the room.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you just come back to normal. But his were way more vivid, and he went to other cities and met all kinds of beings.
Oh, that's a common theme in the characters. The dominant characters in his stories are really based on his own experiences and his own life.
Well, yeah, his own life. He was basically trying to take control of his dreams. Yeah, get some control by writing them down.
But he was you can find a lot of his stories. The audiobooks are on YouTube. And I'd encourage people to sit and listen to the story. He has an incredible writing style, and it's best experienced when you hear it read, rather than reading it yourself or watching a movie. When you hear the story read in its entirety, he's quite an amazing author. And,
it comes off a lot better spoken than written.
Yeah. It's very
much like his hero Edgar Allan Poe.
Encourage people to go listen to some of those. The Call of Cthulhu, Dagon, The
Whisper
Shadow
in the
over
Darkness.
Innsmouth, At the Mountains of Madness. They're all those audiobooks are on YouTube, and I encourage people to listen to them. Well, one of our great authors now, a great one of the great formers of modern culture, even though he
Yep.
didn't live to see the influence.
He didn't live to see it or reap any of the rewards.
Yeah. Well, that's our show for today. I'd like to remind people to visit our website, communicate with us. Hashtag is WIRTV. Our email is David, Eric, or Daniel at weekinreview.tv. I'd also remind everyone to visit Eric's blog at processidealismblogspot.com and Eric's blog, or Daniel's blog at danielheath.com. Well, that's all we have for this week, and we'll look forward to visiting with you next week.
And
I'm
a happy
David Smith.
President's Day to everyone.
I'm sorry?
Happy President's Day.
Oh, is that? Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, everyone have a good week. We'll see you next Friday. I'm David Smith. This is Week in Review.
Better alert the mothership. The Earthlings are on to us.